show.
Let's do it.
All right, welcome to Video Guys Live. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. You give us 20, 30 minutes. We're going to teach you about new technologies, new products, things that are happening in our industry. Today's show, I have a very special guest, a dear friend of mine, Paul Richards from PTZ Optics, and he's going to be here talking our show. Today's show is kind of like, it's a Video Guys Q&A, but it's also an FAQ, and it's an overview of PTZ Optics. We're going to start very simple and get into some more complex stuff. Paul, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me today, Gary. Always love being on the show.
Very cool. So we're going to jump right in and talk about, the show and what we do here. But the Ask Video Guys show, I want to let people know, those questions come from you, our viewers. So whether you're watching us on Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, feel free to send us your questions. You can email them to us. You can put them in the YouTube comments or the Facebook comments, or call us or use our online chat on our website. So let's jump in. Here's the number one question. I know I can't give you a better layup for the alley-oop or a softball lob here, Paul, but why should I consider a PTZ camera?
Well, PTZ cameras, in the grand scheme of things are somewhat new, so it's not a bad question to ask. Essentially, pan-tilt zoom cameras are remotely operated. And so if you're a one-man production, which so many people are starting to do these days, you can run the video production software and run a robotically controlled camera at the same time. But more than that, you can have a church or a facility that's equipped with multiple cameras and have a single camera operator. So it's really a very valuable video production tool that allows you to do more with less, and generally less manpower, which is enabling video producers, volunteers, and others to do so much more with their video productions.
Cool. I have one of your cameras here. It's your 12X camera. I wanted to let people see how small they are. This one's got SDI on it and all that, and it pan, tilts, and zooms. But one of the things that I think is so cool about these cameras is that it's real important for people. Oh, good job. I'm following the camera. I'm learning. Is, a lot of times you have a very tight space limitation where you can't get a human being to be a camera operator in there, or you're on a tight budget, or you're restricted by just what you can use. In a church situation, you can run out of volunteers. It's not like every church has 5 cameramen sitting in the congregation at any given time. So the beauty of this is you can set it up. Plus, when you set them up and work them into the workflow of your show, you know where they are and what they're doing. So it's a variable that becomes kind of a set it and forget it. And I don't mean set the camera in one spot. I just mean you have that angle up there, you have it at the back of the balcony, you have it shooting across the stage, whatever you're doing with it. But you get used to it in your workflow, so it limits the variables that the operator of the switcher, whoever's running the show, has to deal with, which makes the overall production a lot easier. And one of the things I like to tell people is you can operate these pan, tilt, zoom cameras with a joystick controller, and you guys sell those, or with presets, or within an app like vMix, Wirecast, or TriCaster, right, Paul?
That's right. So these joysticks are obviously very popular. A lot of people like to have a joystick just sitting there ready for them. This is our IP joystick. But I'd say the most popular is the smartphone app, whether you have an Android or an iOS device or even a Kindle Fire. It's just great. And so PTZ Optics has had IP camera control from day one. So I could sit here and tell you every camera and software that we work with, from new tech to, the Elgato Stream Deck to OBS. I mean, the list goes on and on. We have it on our website. But as soon as you get that camera on your network, the sky is the limit.
Cool. And then let's talk a little bit about the different verticals that PTZ cameras are used in. I've got some pictures behind me, house of worship, sports broadcasting, education, government. I mean, let's face it, since the tragedy of this epidemic, the need and the PTZ Optics cameras, PTZ cameras has exploded. Talk about where your cameras are going and where the demand is today.
Well, one, obviously, house of worship that you have there, my heart really goes out to, so many folks are used to gathering in a location where they can meet for their services, and it's just simply not possible right now. And even in the foreseeable future, when social distancing, limitations are relaxed, it's still going to be a very slow move where folks who have underlying conditions and older folks aren't going to be able to attend worship services. So going online is so important. I could talk to you about that for a long time, but it's a big deal. In Texas now, a friend of mine sent me a billboard from Austin, Texas that says online church, it's a thing. And we are not ever going to go back to the way things used to be in the house of worship market. Regarding live sports, not a lot of live sports are going on right now. It's incredible what esports is doing. And I do think that when sports come back, they're going to come back strong with the need for streaming. The other ones you had on there,
education is something where, education, your heart breaks too, because teachers aren't even in their classrooms. So they're trying to teach remotely from their homes, but clearly the world has understood that there's a change happening. And I foresee that, just like corporations added a huddle room, I think you're going to see every school have some huddle type rooms where they can do distance education. I think, eventually you're going to see cameras in almost every classroom, just because it's just the world's changing on the way we do things. And government, government is for the people, by the people. The people have to be able to see what's going on. So if you've got a town board meeting and you can't do it in secret, you got to have it in front of people. So the video cameras there, PTZ cameras is just a great way to do it. And one of the things I want to add, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, Paul, but I think it's important, and that is your PTZ cameras would go straight to the internet without anything else if necessary. You can go straight to Facebook or YouTube with a little bit of setup from your PTZ cameras. Of course, we prefer a mixer. You see what we have here, it's more engaging, but just to get started, you could just have the Android or iPhone app operating the PTZ camera by one person in the room, and this camera can go directly out to the world at large, by going through IP. They're all IP related, with the LAN jack. You can put it in there and configure it to go straight out to Facebook or something like that. And that's not true with everyone's camera, but it is true with all the PTZ cameras.
A lot of the houses of worship do that, and they look at the back of the camera and they see that 3.5 millimeter input. So that 3.5 millimeter input right there allows you to plug in a microphone. You can plug in an output from your audio mixer. And like you said, you're streaming to YouTube or Facebook, and you've got your app to control it. So it's a simple, easy way to get started.
Cool. Now, one of the questions we get from people all the time, and it's for me and you who've been doing video forever, it seems like almost a silly question. But for someone starting from fresh who was told, hey, we're going to stream our service next Sunday, get a PTZ camera, they're like, oh, what do I do? And the first question they always ask is, what's the right connection? HDMI, SDI, NDI. So I'm going to bring up a little graphic that shows about it. But Paul, you can walk us through the different connectors.
Yeah, so HDMI, very simple. Everyone knows how to use it, but it's the expensive cabling is not recommended for long runs over 50 feet. It also requires a capture card. Same with SDI. There's a capture card required there, but SDI is the most popular cable today. You'd be surprised. It really is super popular as locking connectors, very reliable. And for folks who want to put in a system that doesn't even have to touch the network and goes directly to their computer, SDI is still the most popular way. NDI is the newest form, and I think most people would use it, but they might not have yet been trained on NDI. It is finally starting to pick up quite a bit, and NDI just needs a single Ethernet cable to bring in video, audio, and camera control.
Yeah, Streaming Media just did a great article, and there's a video to it on, NDI, the one cable for all. And, it really is something that's been coming along. And the one thing I want to make sure people understand is NDI is not a new technology anymore. It's several years old. They're up to version 4.5. And a lot of the gripes that people had about NDI were the early growing pains. And really right now with the latest versions, auto discovery, the firmware that you guys have for your stuff and other people, it really is approaching plug and play ease of use. There's some tricks with setting up your network and configuring the IT portion, but if you get that base right, NDI just works.
It really does. It's great. In fact, I'm happy to say we've actually released our first Ndi Webcam. I'm sure you're getting to that soon, but there's a lot of
cheating. Put it down.
NDI
Put it down.
devices.
You're cheating
right,
ahead.
Put that back. Sorry.
Okay, so now I want to throw you another layup, though, and I want you to answer that. And a lot of people say, well, can I mix and match HDMI, SDI, and NDI cameras? I have an old camera that's SDI only, but I want to get involved in NDI, or I have an HDMI only on my mixer. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So, I mean, SDI and HDMI are going to require capture cards. So you're going to run those cables directly to a computer with a capture card. With NDI, it's going to run over your local area network. And assuming that your local area network is set up properly, it should have basically the same latency as SDI. Now, are we talking a couple milliseconds difference? Maybe. And of course, you can always adjust your settings to align that. But it's at this point totally interchangeable. There's some differences. For example, NDI is compressed. So NDI video is compressed. It will not have the same amount of bandwidth. It will not have the same amount of color depth as SDI and HDMI. Now, for streaming, you are compressing that video anyway, and
I
the
was
end
about to
users
say that.
will not know.
Yeah, and I
So
think one of the things that's important to talk about is you got to know how long your distances are, really. HDMI, 100 feet is really pushing the max of HDMI. We like to tell people stay within a 25-foot cable. SDI, you can run for thousands of feet, no problem, but does require wiring a room up, with SDI to do it right, and SDI routing and stuff like that. The beauty of NDI is any jack that's an Ethernet jack that has Cab5 or higher cabling is going to be able to handle NDI. And when you're looking at a church or a house of worship where you're only thinking about, let's say, one or two or three cameras NDI, and then you're going to have an NDI mixer or switcher, you're really not pushing the limits of what this technology can do. And it's really a slam dunk. A 2 or 3 camera mix, NDI is a very simple, easy way to get started. And the wiring's already in your building 9 out of 10 times.
that's right. It's affordable. It's ready to go.
So now let's talk a little bit about if I decide to go with an NDI, what do I need for my network? Now, we have an NDI workflow specialist we work with, Glenn, and he's been on my show before, but what he's really done is said, when you're going to run the NDI cameras, one of the things you have to take into account is your power budget, and that's real important. So if you look at this slide over here, oh, I was going to do the weatherman thing. Put me back, Al, put me back. All right, you can see we talk about the NDI cameras and how much power they use. And that's real critical because you have to make sure that you have a switch that's got enough ports and enough PoE ports, or PoE plus and plus plus. So we did some research. We spoke to you. We talked to the guys at NewTek. We talked to all our NDI vendors. And we came up with a switch that, while it's not the cheapest switch, we really feel it's the most bulletproof switch for under $500 for setting up a 3 or 4 cam NDI shoot where you're bringing in, we bring in our laptop via NDI. We bring in, you can bring in other apps. You could have a separate computer that's recording all your ISO streams. So you need the ports. But this is from the company Luxol, their 8-port PoE Plus. We do not sell it. It's available at your local IT distribution, Amazon, Newegg, places like that. But they're really good. They're really easy. And what we've done is we really know this switch really well. So what we're telling you is if you go with this switch in your setup, we'll be able to give you a high level of tech support with it. Now, it's a full switch. It's very powerful. When I gave Glenn the task of finding this, one of the things I said is it's got to be something that can handle the complexity that people are going to throw at us, but it's also got to be simple to get up and going when you have the easy setup. Now, there are switches and routers available for $300. I'm not going to kid you that there aren't. There are PoE. But I think if you're really setting something up and you're making the commitment to do NDI right, the switch is not the place to save a couple $100.
Oh, certainly not. I mean, you're saving so much money with that network switch versus capture cards.
Exactly. Next, let's go about a question that people ask all the time. We're gonna get to the basics now. Where can I install my PTZ camera? What's the best practices for installing it? And I'm gonna move out of the way out of here because you have a tripod mount, ceiling mount, wall mounts. Now you guys make all these mounts available, but just talk about why I would use one or the other.
Sure. I mean, now tripod mounts are the most flexible. A lot of folks bring these out on site where they're live streaming a virtual event, and they're like in the tripod because it's quick, it's easy. You pop it on there. Now the ceiling mounts, and I have a ceiling mounted camera right now. I could show you what I look like from the ceiling mounted camera here. But
Show off.
essentially, you can have a ceiling mounted camera, which is quite nice because you can get all of these shots from above and you can do all kinds of things like that. I like them on the wall as well. In fact, I guess I should say, I'm in my studio. I've got one here on a slider. I mean, people are putting these cameras almost anywhere. I've even got a camera here on my desk. It's pole mounted to my desk, if you can see that,
I
because I was
can.
trying to save some floor space. Behind me, I've got a couple on the wall, right? I got a tally light behind me, and then actually, what you're seeing me on for most of this show is actually a monitor mount. That's the new 4K webcam. So they're going all over the place, Gary, literally everywhere.
Now, one of the things I want to talk about is everyone thinks, well, if I have a camera, I just want to get a 30x camera because that's the longest camera and that's the best one. And I got to caution people, it's not always the best idea. You want to get the camera that's the right camera for the room, and you've got a tool that you're going to demonstrate with us. But before we get into that tool, I want to talk about something that we've gotten a lot of calls from that's unfortunate, but it's the reality of what's going on. Is someone has a church with a balcony. They do a beautiful mounting job with a PTZ camera. They get a 30x because it's a long throw. Maybe it's 50, 60, 100 feet. And the problem is someone walks on the balcony and it shakes. And I have a little demonstration here with a pencil. One of the things we need to remember and keep our eye on is a little bit of movement at this end makes the pencil wiggle a lot at the end. So when you're on a 30x camera, every little wiggle and every little jump, everything is amplified. So it's real important that you gotta, if that mount's not working, you gotta either go with a shorter throw, not zoom in as far, or find a better way to mount that camera. Maybe it's gotta be on the side, on the wall, not on the balcony itself, right?
That's right. I mean, there are vibration resistant camera mounts available that you can look into, but nothing is going to stop bad placement. If it's on a balcony and people are walking there, you should choose a new solution for the actual mounting location. Other locations that are difficult are near large speakers,
Yep.
where there's a lot of vibration
The
from the
boom of the
bass.
bass. We all love the bass.
So you got to be careful with that. Now, obviously, if you there's nothing you can do with the location, then take a look at the vibration mounts. They're pricey, but they might save you some solution. Other people have taken little bits of rubber and put them down underneath the camera. But generally, it's about the location. You're right, Gary. You know, you don't
Now,
want people walking on the
Paul,
balcony.
I want to give you the calm now because you've got two tools on your website that are really cool that I want you to show off. One is how to choose the right zoom camera based on the distance you're going to throw, and I love that tool because get what's right, and we're going to set that up to put Paul with that. Paul, you're going to take over the screen, right? And then the other
That's
feature
right.
that you're going to show us is that you actually have like a room designer tool you can use. So this is the PTZ Optics website, guys, and we'll be embedding a link directly to this in the metadata on our YouTube and on our blog article. So, and we'll also put it in the Facebook comments. So, Paul, I'm going to let you go full screen on this now, and you just take this whole thing away.
So right in the center of all of the camera pages now is this field of view calculator. All you got to do is type how far your camera is going to be from the subject, and it will give you the distance in feet for totally zoomed in and totally zoomed out. That's the width. So at 75 feet away, a 30x can zoom into 3 feet of width. That means that you can get a head and shoulders shot of someone 75 feet away. This
Awesome.
86 number below, that's fully zoomed out. So fully zoomed out, 86 feet wide is fully zoomed out. So those are the two numbers that you really need to think about. The width of the image fully zoomed in and the width of the image fully zoomed out.
Awesome.
And that's 12x, 20x, and 30x there.
All right, and then you've got a little calculator, right? Or are you going to show us the designer now? What are you going to take us to?
So let me show you guys. You guys are getting the first look at this. This is our brand new Ptz Optics Designer. And this is great for, corporate customers, folks who are building out a room and they want to give the folks that they work with an idea of what the camera is going to look like from a field of view perspective, very similar to what we were just doing there, Gary. So what you're seeing here is a camera. I just chose a Ptz Optics 12X, and it allows us to put the camera in the room and show the actually exactly what it will look like zoomed in and what it will look like fully zoomed out. We
Very
can
cool.
actually click the little 3D button here, and Sorry about that.
Like I said,
my
this just
Pinterest
went
button.
live, so give Paul a second.
Sorry, that was my Pinterest button I clicked by accident there. We'll pop this camera back in over here, and we'll click the 3D button. All right, there we go. So this, you have to watch this little thing that shows you about how the mouse moves
Yep.
and everything. All right, we're good. Okay, so then you get a full 3D look at the room.
Awesome.
And so this is great if you're building a little huddle room or you're designing out a classroom. You can see exactly what it's going to look like, and kind of take your customers through this actually even in a first person view here. So we can come in, take a look at what the room's going to look like.
I feel like I'm
I
playing Doom.
suggest it's actually built off of an early video game style
I figured.
situation. But yeah, so there it is there. You can
Awesome.
move cables around, add different items. All of the PTZ Optics and HuddleCam HD cameras are in here.
Cool. And
We've
we're
even
going to
got the
put a link
TriCaster.
Paul, we're going to put a link directly to this in our metadata and on our blog article and in the Facebook comments as well, guys. So you'll be able to see where that is. Paul, I want to cut back to the Q&A now if we could. And if you could bring all three of us, me and the Q&A and Paul back up. And one of the questions we get, and we do it here, so it's a kind of cheat question as a layup, but can I use PTZ cameras with other cameras? A lot of people think they have to go all PTZ, and that's not true at all.
Yeah, that's not true at all. PTZ cameras are a little bit more expensive than maybe a normal zoom camera. Like we have a whole line of Z cams. So sometimes you can save a little money by if you just need a static shot. You don't need a PTZ camera for that necessarily.
We use one up here when we're looking down at our products and stuff for our product spotlights. We actually have one of yours mounted right up there in the ceiling.
Well, people really love these Z cams. We have some brand new ones I'm guessing we're going to talk about in a second here. But yeah, you don't need to have all PTZ cameras. A lot of people think that. If you've already got a couple camcorders, you can start to migrate to PTZ, especially in a church situation where you want your volunteers to have control.
Absolutely. And then another question that people get is, and this was something I have to admit, we had a lot of trouble with it early on, but all the technology's gotten better since we set up our studio. And that is one of the tricks that you want to do for best results is you want to make sure you color match all your cameras. So it doesn't have to all look like your PTZ camera out of the box or the other camera out of the box. But like as an example, we got a new CX350 from Panasonic. We love that camera. So now we try to color match everything to that. Talk a little about color matching some of the tools you guys have available and some of the tools that are existing in some of the mixer apps that are out there.
Well, and it is a little bit of a catch-22, Gary. If you're setting up a brand new system, you actually want all the cameras to be the same because that is going to make your job of color matching easy. If you go to a, Hollywood studio, not only do they have all the same cameras generally, but they literally buy 5 red cameras off the lot.
Yep.
So the serial numbers are sequential, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, people definitely do like to use the exact same cameras, even like 312X over 330Xs.
Yep.
Because if you're really that particular. But luckily today, there are great color matching tools that will allow you to color match almost any camera to another very easily. And the PTZ Optics cameras, I'm actually using one now. They come up with a little on-screen display menu, and you have the ability, and we've really been working hard on this, to
you guys
tune
have done a good job.
all of the different settings, including color matching to Kelvin scale. And what that means is if you have LED lights, as I have in this room, you can set the LED lights to a specific Kelvin temperature, and then you can set the cameras to that exact color temperature to really get the white balance perfect. But even beyond what's in the cameras, which is in depth, we've got contrast, we have luminance, we've got all of the exposure settings. You can lock the shutter speed, all of those things, the aperture, everything in there, including hue and contrast and luminance and all that. But then on top of that, so you start with, hey, let's get the frame rate of every camera exactly the same, right? Follow the 180 degrees shutter speed rule.
Yep.
So we get the frame rate, we get the shutter speed. Maybe we need to change a little bit of the iris depending on where cameras are, but we want to keep everything as close as possible. Get what color balance exactly the same, the exposure, the color, everything like that. Then on top of that, we can color grade the cameras with video production software. Now, this isn't necessarily built into OBS. OBS has, the free open broadcaster software, has some tools that you can use, and it's worth actually using the filters that they have. But this is something that's in Wirecast, something that's in vMix and the TriCasters and others, where you can really get in to the lift and the balance.
You
And
know
the
what I'm
gamma and
hoping
really
for,
do
Paul?
well.
I'm hoping for like a dropper tool like Premiere has, where I can pick the camera I like, hit the dropper, and have the software match everything together, which it's just a feature request. I'm putting it out there to anyone from OBS, vMix, or NewTek or Wirecast who's watching. Next, Paul, I want to jump into something that you tried to cheat and jump ahead. It's hard to keep you focused, but there's some new technology that I'm going to say is called virtual PTZ or ePTZ, and what is the difference? So before we get into your product specifically, I want to let you tell us what the difference is. First of all, you tell us what they do, and then we'll talk about the difference. We did a little bit on a preview show before, but this is just great technology, folks. I love this little cam. We'll get into it more. Paul, take it away. Tell us about it.
Well, if I can share my screen, I can show this
Cool.
diagram that I have that is really going to show it off pretty well here. So essentially, what you're able to do is take a 4K. Generally, we're talking about 4K when we're talking about electronic pan tilt zoom. But not everybody's ready for a 4K experience or a 4K workflow. So you can take either a 1080 or a 720p video output, and now you can zoom into camera presets and locations virtually inside of that larger 4K image space. So it's like having pan tilt zoom with a static camera, no moving parts, which makes them highly reliable. And there's no motor that could go bad or anything like that. And you have all
just
this.
to jump in, so what we're taking is a large 4K image, and we're cutting out, come back to my screen if we could, we're cutting out an HD region of interest. And then not only do we have that regions of interest for presets, but we can use the regions of interest to actually have movement through it as if we're pan tilting zooming. So if you could bring the slide back up, and me and Paul too, Oliver. Great. One of the things I want to talk about, though, there is a difference between ePTZ and virtual PTZ. Now, ePTZ means you're doing it with electronics that's embedded in the camera, whereas virtual PTZ means the software is doing it, your software engine or an app. And one of the things about that is it kind of takes a lot of horsepower to do that. So if you're doing virtual PTZ on a TriCaster or vMix or Wirecast, you're going to be taking a lot of that CPU, GPU to do it. So that's one of the advantages of ePTZ, because it's in the camera. Now, Paul, take it away and tell us about the it's actually two new ePTZ cameras that have two different flavors. So tell us about it. Let's take Paul full screen. You can show us the cameras if you have them there too.
Well, I do, and I'll do you one better. This is the camera right here. So this camera is going to do so well in some of the markets that we talked about, Gary, including schools, right? And distance learning. So here's the camera right here. This is the camera that's right in front of me. So it's a great camera. It's tiny, and this got this wide field of view, right? Really wide field of view. But I can go in here and I can zoom in and really make it look, super high quality video, where I can make presentations and I can do camera presets. So let me set up we have four of these cameras, right?
Of course
Okay, so we've got two webcam versions. So there's a USB and an NDI version of these webcams. So this is the NDI version. It's power over Ethernet. It's 4K video output. And the camera I'm using right now is the camera with
I have one too, Paul.
NDI.
Mine's not hooked up. Too. But I want to stress these also have HDMI output, because you kind of glossed over that. So it's USB and HDMI, or it's USB, HDMI, and NDI, correct?
That is right. So super high quality cameras. And just really quickly, I'll show you here. So I'll set a preset. All right, so I've got a preset there. I'll zoom over. It looks like I've got a PTZ camera here, right?
Yep.
And that's what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to. This is the difference between virtual PTZ and electronic. This is actual. It looks and feels like a PTZ, but take a look at this. snaps right to where you want it. And you have the ability to kind of decide how you want to do
It's
that.
the illusion of having multiple cameras.
It's like having a switcher. Now, we wanted to take it a step further, Gary, and we wanted to have a camera that gave you both. Okay, so this camera is the Ptz Optics version of this. And generally, for folks who are watching, Huddle Cam is the plug and play USB. We're using a little Ndi here, but no brainer. This is plug and play for the teacher who's just starting their first year of distance learning. But for the professionals out there, we have our new Z cams that are have ePTZ in them. These have 2 SDI outputs, so you can have your cake and eat it too. One of the SDI outputs is the full wide angle, 104-degree field wide angle. The other output is your ePTZ. So now we're playing with 4K ePTZ in the world of SDI switchers. Plus, we have an Ndi version of this as well.
Very, very cool, Paul. We're so excited about those. And we have a question. Robert Bullington is asking some questions about putting a Ndi into his church. So one of the things he says, he's wired with Cat 5, which I want to make sure that he checks. Does he have Cat 5e where you can do PoE, or is it just Cat 5? When you have the E, it's real simple to say go Ndi. When you're Cat 5, I like the PoE aspect of the cameras, and giving that up always doesn't make sense. So I'm going to say you're on the cusp there, and you better make sure that it's really 5 or better, because usually when it's 5, it means there's some older Cat in there too.
Yes. No, the building we were in was outfitted with Cat 5. Cat 5 generally is 10/100.
Yep.
Cat 5e is gigabit.
Yep.
So you might have to, now the best thing to do with those cables are to use them as cable pulls and literally take the old one, tie the new one to it, and pull it through and get a new one, because it's not going to do you any much good in the future.
Agreed. Cool. So I want to go into another thing that's near and dear to you. If we could bring this on the screen, get me and Paul up there, and that is can PTZ cameras be used with conferencing apps like Zoom or Google Meetings? And you are the king of Zoom. You're using Zoom in so many different ways. You've come up with so many clever things, but let's answer this on the most basic level if we could, Paul.
Well, first of all, you're probably looking at the USB versions. Now, you can, of course, use the SDI version with a capture card. So you can capture SDI with an EpiFan, SDI to USB capture card, plug that into Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx, any computer that runs those, and get your video in. But the nice thing about using the USB versions is that most of these video conferencing softwares are designed for USB cameras.
Yep.
And so they support a protocol called UVC, which allows, like Zoom, for example, to give the far end camera operator control of these cameras. So we have telemedicine customers, Gary, that are deploying thousands of the USB models because it gives the doctors the capability to remotely control them and zoom into the patients that they're working with telemedicine.
Very cool. Now I want to double back because we got an ePTZ question for you. So John sent us the Ndi version of the PTZ ePTZ cam, the Huddle Cam Pro, the Pro one. Does it push wide shot and program shot just like SDI? Do you get both over Ndi?
So these cameras are single output. So these are designed for a single output.
No, I think he's talking about your big one, the PTZ one. With the
the big one. The big one does. So the big one right now is designed as a single output. There's a way to hack it to do a double. But right now, the answer to that is this is a single Ndi output. You have the ability to choose whether it's the widescreen or the ePTZ. I mean, obviously, you would go with the ePTZ because you would just zoom it out. This does not output 2 Ndi outputs. It can output 2 RTSP outputs.
Cool.
Which is why there is a little bit of a hack to make it work. But I haven't really created a guide on how to do it. So the official answer is 1 Ndi output.
You'll get there. Okay. And then, well, before we get to the big $1 million question, Adam had another question. Is there any large sensor PTZ cams available so we can get shallow depth of field without zooming?
Well, you can get shallow depth of field with zooming. And the way to do that is to open up the iris as much as possible. You open up that iris and you start to get that bokeh behind your subject.
Right.
You also have the ability to lock the focus of these PTZ Optics cameras. So if you get it into where you like it, and you're really getting into the fine tuning of the focus. I do this all the time, especially with our little Z cam here
Yep.
that we have on our slider. I like to zoom it in to something perfect, and then I lock the focus right on the edge, and you do get a pretty good bokeh of things out of focus behind
Cool.
your subject.
And now, Paul, I want to ask you the $64,000 question. I've been on the forums all weekend. Folks have back orders in, and they're searching for these cameras. They can't find them. The 20X and the 30X cameras, you've sold through hundreds, maybe even thousands. I mean, no one foresaw what the effect of this virus and social distancing was going to be on the streaming business. But, we've all jumped on it, and we're there, and people want to know, when can I get a camera? I love the show, love what you said. Paul, when's there going to be a camera for me? I want to order one today.
Well, I have good news for everyone. We have been on about a 2-week back order, and we are receiving massive shipments of cameras every day this week. Essentially, for what has happened, and I feel bad for everyone who had to wait a couple weeks, because I know, Gary, we sell video communication equipment. This is essential equipment
Yep.
for many businesses that help them to communicate and really help with many
Businesses, house of
continue to
worship,
expand.
schools, they all need these cameras, Paul.
The demand has skyrocketed, which has been part of the issue, but our manufacturing plants can meet the demand. The bottleneck for the short period of time, when we look back on this, Gary, it's not going to seem like a big deal, but for the short period of time when we've had the bottleneck, it has been because, basically shipments for a long time were not quarantined, but they actually were quarantined, to be honest. Shipments from all over the world have been quarantined to make sure that the virus doesn't spread through shipments. They have been prioritizing medical shipments and, for first responders in the field. And all of that has kind of pushed us to the back of the line.
And weight
for
limitations too, right, Paul?
Yeah, there was a weight limitation for UPS and FedEx of 50 kilograms. That has finally been removed as of last week. And, as soon as they remove that, boom, we are receiving massive shipments every day this week. So,
So the answer is to people from Video Guys' point of view is the cavalry's coming. If you've got back orders in with us or with other dealers, those should be shipping over the next couple of days. And if you place your orders now, there's a good chance you get shipped early next week.
That's what we're hoping, Gary. There is a large back order, so I hope that I can't promise that what we're getting is going to fulfill it. But we've never seen this many cameras in our career. We're talking about. Oh, I heard numbers. Over 100 pallets are coming into our warehouse this week. So
Cool.
It should satisfy a lot of the demand.
Paul, the cavalry coming is the news everyone on here. So thank you very much. Thank you so much for being on our show. You're always a fantastic guest. Love that you were able to take over and drive and show us the cameras in action. We saw what ePTZ can do. We heard about some great information about these cameras. I knew we were going to run long, but that me and you kept it under an hour is a miracle. But we kept it in about 40, 45 minutes. So I want to thank you very much, Paul. Any last words for the audience?
Well, it's a tough time out there, but this is the time to be watching video, guys. This is the time to be reading the blog posts. This is the time to subscribe to the professional video channels. This is the time to get involved with video production and live streaming and video communications as well. Video production is one thing, but using Zoom, GoToMeeting, Skype, all of this stuff. The industry has been pushed forward 3 to 5 years. And that is at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty, at a time of a lot of change, one thing that is certain is that the video production industry, communications industry, it's going to be the opportunity for so many businesses out there. So learn how to use this. Don't let it pass you by. There's a huge opportunity here to become more productive, to become a resource and a change agent inside your organization, whether you're a volunteer at a church or you're a teacher at your school. Learn how to use this stuff and become an agent for change for the better, because we need your help to become more productive and spread the message, whether it's God or whether it's communications, education. Use this technology for the better, and we're going to help everybody get through this.
Yep. I say social distancing requires live streaming. And I say live streaming enables you to flatten the curve.
Oh, I love that, Gary. And somebody else told me something too about social distancing. We are socially together. We are physically distant.
Well
Okay?
done.
We're socially together.
Well
And
done.
let's
Paul,
stay there.
thank you very much. I'm going to now bring up the screen, talk about some next shows. Paul, thanks. Have a good one. If you could just bring up me and the screen behind us, that would be great. All right, our next two shows, very exciting. Get me and the screen in there. We haven't done any shows on storage in a while, folks. Get me in the screen. All right, we haven't had a whole lot of shows on storage, folks, so we're going to do a storage show. It's been a while. I don't know what this is. This is some weird stuff on the side, but I'll talk over it anyway. We're going to be doing SSDs, and we're also going to be doing some new kind of memory cards that are out there that you bring up, CFast Express. So we're going to be talking about that. That's the SSD storage update, May 19th. We're super excited about that. And then also, we're going to be doing a brand new product, the YOLO Live. The YOLO Live is coming. The YOLO Box, it is a self-contained Android device that lets you mix, watch, and produce your whole show. We're going to be bringing that product in. We hope to have our first shipment in a couple of weeks. So I want to thank everyone for joining our show today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was a good one. And this is Gary from Videoguys. Peace.
Videoguys is available Monday through Friday. Give us a call at 1-800-323-2325. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay connected with all of our updates. And you can like us on Facebook. Keep an eye out for our live videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.